Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of TEDXcellence. I am Scribelight, your illustrious host, here from my Corona bunker on the moon, as I take a look at the brand X of TED Talks for insight and wisdom, but usually just come away from it with an intellectual migraine. So did that work? I think I worked on that. I didn't write that down or anything. I'm not reading from a script, but I kind of thought about that ahead of time. Does that sound like a good intro? I'll probably never be able to repeat it again because, like I said, I didn't write it down. But anyway, I'm just really sad, guys. Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race. And my heart, it are broken. Anyway, that little bit of dating this stream a little bit. But hi, everybody. How are you doing? It's Wednesday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm glad you all came out to join me on this latest adventure. Say hello to those of you that have shown up to deal with this with me live. Raziel, hello. Nothing for you here. Hello. Star Saver, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Loki Lycan, hello. X Bubba Hotep, hello. Keeverdam, hello. Sabian187, hello. Midnight in Exile, hello. Asian Hippie, hello. Jeremy M, hello. Gear PG, hello. K Shull, hello. Mr. Adam, hello. Somnium Nation, hello. Functional, hello. John Smith, hello. Johnny Hellcat, hello. The Dead Kaiser, hello. Emperor WR Costin, hello. Pink Hall the Driving Ape Man, hello. Nicholas Daly, hello. Shio Gorath, hello. Zero the Hero 909, hello. Perfect Pitch, hello. Angela Ariaga, hello. Delta Cross, hello. Decode, hello. Revenas, hello. Enoch the Stable Master, hello. Cryptic, hello. Chris R, hello. Lurking Gopher, hello. Sean Uli, hello. I don't think my voice can go up any higher. Mac McManx, hello. All right, guys. So today's adventure, if we can call it that, the official title is, well, the title that you might be able to see on your screen, but I'll forgive you if you can't because of the way that it's shrunk down. But the title of the presentation is Seeing White. That's it. Seeing White with John Buin. And this is a TEDx Charlottesville. And given the subject matter and the location, I can only imagine a certain event of recent history will be brought up, but I could be mistaken. We'll find out. Because like with all of these, I haven't watched them before. Only watched a couple of seconds or so to make sure that the sound quality from the original recording was enough. I did have to boost this one a bit because it was a little dim, but I think it should be plenty audible for all of you. Of course, we'll find out in just a moment. Enoch, I said hello to Enoch, sorry. I saw a thing there. I was like, oh, I hadn't said that person. Assassin of the Gray, hello. I don't think I said hello to you. All right, guys. So per usual, I'll start off by playing a few seconds. I need you guys to tell me if you can hear it, if it's legible, because if it's not, this will be a very short stream. Just like previous, this is a long one as far as TEDx talks go. It's just over 18 minutes. So as usual, I will try to keep this around an hour long and no more, so it doesn't overwhelm anyone, especially myself. And so, with all that being said, Crimson Tiger, hello. And Sir Quack, hello. Here we go.
But seriously, what is up with us white people?
But seriously, what is up with us white people? Okay, you guys hear that all right? Let me know. Like I say, you might be able to tell I had to boost the audio a bit there. Zero the Hero says, fine. Attack Alpaca says, good. Keeverdam says, good. Oh my, Lady Gopher, goof. Not good, but goof. Well, he might be a goof. Okay, what is up with us white people? I don't know. By all means, edify me.
I've been thinking about that a lot the last few years, and I know I have company. Look, I get it. People of color have been asking that question for centuries.
Have they? Okay. Are you speaking for them or just making assumptions? I don't know.
But I think a growing number of white folks are too, given what's been going on out there in our country.
Such as?
And notice I said, what's up with us white people? Because right now I'm not talking about those white people.
Okay. How do you differentiate, might I ask?
The ones with the swastikas and the hoods and the tiki torches.
Aha. Yeah, we're in Charlottesville, so obviously we're talking about white supremacists, or at least those that he classifies as white supremacists, because various arguments can be made about the Charlottesville situation, but I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, yeah, so people who actually possess an ideology of racial supremacy, yes, it's true. There are white people who believe in that kind of stuff. It's true. There are people of all colors who believe in racial supremacy of one kind or another, whether it's an organization or just a personally held belief. It's true. There are. But it's not all of them. And I guess he's making that distinction. So what is the problem with us white people? But he's not talking about actual white supremacists. Okay. I think I understand. Let's go on.
They are a problem and a threat. They perpetrate most of the terrorism in our country, as you all in Charlottesville know better than most. But I'm talking about something bigger, more pervasive. I'm talking about all of us, white folks writ large.
Okay, white folks writ, blah, blah, blah. I'm having a monkey moment. White folks writ large, but not including actual white supremacists. Okay, I got it.
And maybe especially people sort of like me, self-described, progressive, don't want to be racist, good white people.
So progressive, don't want to be racist, good white people like you. Why do you need to self-describe in that way? I mean, why do you need to proclaim that? Why do you feel the need to defend yourself before an accusation is actually levied against you? I wonder.
Right. Any good white people in the room?
Well, the way that your talk's going, I'm assuming the answer's no, because there's a problem with white people without any other qualification.
I was raised to be that sort of person. I was a little kid in the 60s and 70s, and to give you some sense of my parents, actual public opinion polls at the time showed that only a small minority, about 20% of white Americans, approved and supported Martin Luther King and his work with the civil rights movement while Dr. King was still alive.
Yeah. All those 80% of rest of white people in the country were totally racist because they didn't agree with Dr. Martin Luther King. Don't get me wrong. Martin Luther King is about as close to a human saint as we are likely to come by in our modern day, for the most part, relatively modern day. But not agreeing with someone who might have had good ideas doesn't automatically make you a racist on the other side of the equation. Just saying. Thank you, Bubba Hotep. We should make a bingo card for these. It depends on the subject matter. I mean, if we're talking about diversity and inclusion initiatives, there's a whole bingo card for those. If we're talking about toxic masculinity, there's a bingo card for those. It would be a project to come up with a generalized bingo card for every umbrella subject that I tend to float towards. But anyway, guys, yes, historically speaking, Dr. Martin Luther King, at the time that he was alive, was not that popular as he is now. He was not as revered then as he is now. And yet, we're supposed to believe that thus 80% of white people in America back in the Martin Luther King era were all, what, because they didn't agree with Martin Luther King or weren't aware of him that well or anything else, they were thus racist? Is that it?
I'm proud to say my parents were in that group. Race got talked about in our house. And when the shows that dealt with race would come on the television, they would sit us kids down, made sure we watched. The Sidney Poitier movies, Roots.
Roots was the 80s, wasn't it? Or was it? I thought Roots was the 80s, not the 60s and 70s. Maybe I'm off. I don't remember how old Roots is.
The message was loud and clear, and I got it. Racism is wrong. Racists are bad people.
Yeah, okay. I think that is a universal truth. Most rational, civilized people can agree with that. Okay? At least we're on that same page.
At the same time, we lived in a very white place in Minnesota. And I'll just speak for myself. I think that allowed me to believe that those white racists on the TV screen were being beamed in from some other place. It wasn't about us, really. I did not feel implicated.
And you shouldn't, because implication in something like that is up to the individual. You are not implicated in it because of your skin color. Unless, of course, and I'm going to be absolutely amazed if he reaches this conclusion, that one's skin color determines one's quality of thinking. Maybe I'm just jumping the gun.
Now I would say I'm still in recovery from that early impression.
Oh, please.
I got into journalism in part because I cared about things like equality, justice. For a long time, racism was just such a puzzle to me. Why is it still with us when it's so clearly wrong?
Why is murder still with us when it's so clearly wrong? Why is theft with us when it's so clearly wrong? Because people are fallible creatures. They can be scared, they can be selfish, they can be sociopathic. There will always be things in the world that people do, believe in, or otherwise adhere to that are, to the rest of us, atrocious. Please don't tell me that you got to the point of going into journalism, I'm assuming somewhere in the neighborhood of being an adult, thinking that because something is widespread, agreed upon to be wrong, it shouldn't exist. I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, right, murder shouldn't exist. But let's be realistic. Or do you lack that ability?
Why such a persistent force? Maybe I was puzzled because I wasn't yet looking in the right place or asking the right questions.
Well, my question wasn't Roots in the 1980s? Nope, everyone has corrected me. 1977. All right. I remember, I think it was, I think what threw me off was I believe it was rebroadcast at least once when I was a kid. So maybe I believed it was a 1980s production, but my mistake.
Have you noticed that when people in our mostly white media report on what they consider to be racial issues, what we consider to be racial issues, what that usually means is that we're pointing our cameras and our microphones and our gaze at people of color?
Well, should we be pointing them at the white supremacists? Oh, wait, we do. We do point them at the white supremacists when it's a racial issue and white supremacists are involved. But it almost always goes one direction because the overall narrative is, and the history that fuels it, the undeniable history that fuels it is, that laws in our country exploited and criminalized and oppressed people who are not white far more often and far longer than any other demographic. So, yeah, racial issues in the United States generally involve or are focused on the minority populations of the country. That's just because that's how that works. Now, if you're saying that it is never the case that white people become implicated in racism, cameras turned on them, I would beg to differ.
Asking questions like, how are Black folks or Native Americans, Latino or Asian Americans, How are they doing in a given community or with respect to some issue, the economy, education? I've done my share of that kind of journalism over many years.
Well, almost to a one. Every time I see some statistics talking about, racial disparities in the country, it's here's this number for white people or Asian people, and here's this number for Black people or Hispanic people. And almost to a one, it's like white people, because they make up a larger part of the population, have X access to resources, primarily based on just numbers, as compared to any other demographic population that is of a smaller number than white people. So, and when you're talking about equity and equality, most people think you're talking about parity, like everything on the same level. So yes, that's the question that's usually asked, because the narrative is it's always a race to catch up with the white people. And if you're not caught up with the white people, then you're probably being oppressed in some way, is what I'm usually hearing.
But then George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin.
George Zimmerman, who's not white.
Followed by this unending string of high-profile police shootings of unarmed Black people.
And every single one of them was unjustified, by the way. Not saying there weren't ones that were absolutely unjustified, but it's a case-by-case basis. And also, no people of any other skin color have ever been wrongfully shot to death or simply just shot by the police. It's never happened before. It'll never happen again. Just so you know.
The rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, Dylan Roof and the Charleston Massacre, Oscar So White.
The Dallas shootings of police officers, Baton Rouge. I mean, I could come up with some other examples too. Are you going to bring those up?
All the incidents from the day-to-day of American life, these overtly racist incidents that we now get to see because they're captured on smartphones and sent across the internet.
Thank you, Gear PG. These TEDx talks remind me more and more of preachers or pastors trying to point out why you are a bad person and why you need Jeebus to free you. Well, like with toxic masculinity, like with where I'm assuming our speaker is going, there is the idea of original sin. You know, not in a religious context, but in that indelible stain of something that you just cannot get past. Either you're male and or you're white and or you're straight and or you're wealthy or something. I mean, you can get past being wealthy on a bad financial day or just giving away all your money. Or for that one I did the other day, you're thin. You know, there's always something about you that, at least for the moment, if not for your entire life, is intrinsic about your makeup, which indelibly marks you as bad or as contributing to badness, whether you mean to or not. And therefore, it's something you either have to perpetually apologize for and or actively work to, I don't know, somehow cleanse yourself of the sin you'll never be able to wash off. That's what a lot of these things go. And it is very religious in a way. You have to believe in the inherent wretchedness of a person or of a demographic simply based on some element that more often than not, they can't change. It's just part of who they are. And so it's a very easy indictment to make against an entire demographic to be the evil ones, and you'll never be able to get away from it.
And beneath those visible events, the stubborn data, the studies showing systemic racism in every institution we have, housing segregation, job discrimination, the deeply racialized inequities in our schools and criminal justice system. And what really did it for me, and I know I'm not alone in this either, the rise of Donald Trump.
Of course. You know, just let's ignore 8 years of Obama. Let's ignore the millions of Americans that voted for a Black president. Yeah, no, all of that, none of that matters. None of that says anything about our country in general beforehand. No, time began in 2016 as soon as Trump became president. Nothing that happened before that. No strides made, no laws changed, none of that. Everything is only as it is from 2016 forward. Chat Mort is in the chat. Hello, Chat Mort, as it were. Irate Prostate, hello. Chief Moody, hello. I'm not going to necessarily cut in with hellos all the time, but just because I was looking at the chat right now. Oh, no. And Alyssa Doesn't Lie, hello.
And the discovery that a solid majority of white Americans would embrace or at least accept such a raw, bitter kind of white identity politics.
That's exactly why people voted for Trump, and the only reason why. They didn't have any economic concerns that Trump was speaking to that Hillary Clinton wasn't. There was no suspicion over Hillary Clinton's, I don't know, integrity that made her as unpopular a candidate as Trump. I mean, Trump didn't win because everybody loved Trump. Trump won because he was running against probably one of the most, I mean, just overall unenticing Democratic candidates we have had since, oh, God, I don't, John Kerry maybe. But even then, John Kerry at least kind of did okay. But for crying out loud, Hillary was a terrible candidate. She ran a terrible campaign. I've mentioned it several times, and I'll keep doing so. If you want to see the inside story of why Hillary lost, more so than anything having to do with people loving Trump, just go look at the book named Shattered. It's inside the failed Clinton campaign. It is an amazing just look at exactly what went on in that campaign, and also a really interesting look at modern politics. There's bits and pieces in there about how Bernie Sanders first decided to run for president, which is also something that people should not shy away from also blaming for Trump's win. The Democratic Party was split. A lot of people who wanted to vote for Bernie just didn't go vote, or they voted for Trump rather than vote for Hillary. That Trump's win was not an indictment of people being racists. Trump's win was an indictment of the Democratic Party having a very, very weak candidate, a very unlikable candidate, a poorly organized campaign, and also being ideologically at war with itself, and a lot of people who wanted to see a better economy. That's the thing that people don't seem to understand. Trump didn't necessarily win because people liked Trump or thought he was a great guy or nothing. But generally speaking, the economy does a lot better under Republican leadership, classically speaking. Now, not always the case, and sometimes things smack you upside the head, but that's what people were looking for at that stage of the game. And I'll tell you what, up until this whole coronavirus thing started, the economy has been booming. Oh, that's Obama's fault. Well, maybe part of it is, but we're 4 years into Trump's deal, and it hadn't stopped. So I don't know. The proof's kind of in the numbers, I suppose. Anyway, I've gone on long enough about that. But tell us more about how the rest of the country is racist because Trump happened to win the Electoral College, by the way.
This was all disturbing to me as a human being. As a journalist, I found myself turning the lens around, thinking, wow, white folks are the story.
Yeah. It's the white folks. It's not the economy, stupid. Because, no white folks voted for Hillary, I guess? What are you talking about?
Whiteness is a story.
It is a story. I'll grant you that.
And also thinking, can I do that? What would a podcast series about whiteness sound like?
Well, I'll tell you what, dude. There are a lot out there. You take your pick. Heck, in fact, I'll introduce you to many a TEDx talk that effectively act as podcast episodes, and you can listen to those. What would that sound like? Who knows? Who has any idea?
And oh, by the way, this could get uncomfortable.
You don't say. Well, you guys live and breathe discomfort. That's how you make people think you're having an effect on them, by making them uncomfortable. I mean, you guys hold that up. And I'm not just talking about this particular individual, but over and over and over again, I see people say or promote themselves as, I like to instigate uncomfortable conversations. And that's a badge of honor. Making people feel uncomfortable is somehow a good thing, you know? And admittedly, context matters depending on the subject matter and who you're talking to or under what circumstances. But as a general rule, making people feel uncomfortable, at least from where I come from, is not something to be proud of. It's something to be concerned about. But this guy, he wants to do that because then he can call it reaching you, getting to a place you don't want to go to. I'm going to take you somewhere you're too scared to look because I'm insightful and you have a problem, whether you know it or not. And I'm going to show it to you through discomfort.
I had seen almost no journalism that looked deeply at whiteness.
What? Okay. If he's talking about just after 2016, I mean, okay, he has framed this as he started wondering about this after Trump won the election. You'd never seen any journalism look at whiteness. Okay, I was seeing all that stuff in 2014, just in the reverberations of Gamergate. So you must not have been looking very hard beforehand or something. Or at least not looking backwards. Or is Satsu right? For you and so many others, time really did begin in 2016 and everything prior to that just never happened.
But of course, people of color, and especially Black intellectuals, have made sharp critiques of white supremacist culture for centuries.
And no white people have ever criticized or critiqued white supremacy. It's never happened before. All right? I mean, no white people died at the hands of the KKK in the civil rights movement. All right? John Brown didn't essentially wage a war against slavery back in the olden days. No, this never happened. It's only one side of the equation. And you're the one divvying people up by race. You can't just say there are good ideas and there are bad ideas, and it doesn't matter what color skin you have, depending on what you're promoting. Okay, that's you.
And I knew that in the last 2 or 3 decades, scholars had done interesting work looking at race through the frame of whiteness, what it is, how we got it, how it works in the world.
And were all of those scholars not white then?
I started reading, and I reached out to some leading experts on race and the history of race. One of the first questions I asked was, where did this idea of being a white person come from in the first place? Science is clear. We are one human race.
No, science is clear. There are different... Okay. I'm going to put a word out there. Caucasoid. Caucasoid. Amerind. All right, I took an anthropology class in high school. The human species is split up into different races. Different physical features, both skin color and anatomical, that differentiate us as a species from place to place and region to region in the world. Now, we are all humans, but we're all different and have different genetic histories. That shouldn't necessarily divide us, but it does distinguish us. Doesn't mean anybody's better or worse than anyone else fundamentally, but there are differences biologically. So where are we going with this now?
We're all related. all descended from a common ancestor in Africa.
Uh-huh.
Some people walked out of Africa into colder, darker places and lost a lot of their melanin.
Okay, so there are genetic differences that are passed down because of where you ended up. And okay. Thank you, Cryptic. Same species, but different race. Yes. You know, it's like you can put 7 cats in front of me and they'll all be felines, but they're not necessarily the same kind of feline. All right. You might have a tabby cat and a tiger and a jaguar and a lynx. They're all felines of a kind, but they're not the same kind of feline.
Some of us more than others. But genetically, we are all 99.9% the same.
Uh-huh. Yes, very good. Yes, we are. You're correct. And yet that 1% difference that you're dwelling on right now apparently confirms. Let me try that again. Confers a particular way of thinking onto people because of their skin color, or a particular quality of being based on their skin color.
There's more genetic diversity within what we call racial groups than there is between racial groups. There's no gene for whiteness or blackness or Asianness or what have you.
Yeah, but then what is up with us white people?
So how did this happen?
How did special differentiation occur? Well, you kind of just explained it in a very simple way. Common ancestors spreading out to different areas of the world, different climates, different situations, different, I don't know, circumstances. You know, go to the Galapagos Islands and see the differentiation in finches. That's basic evolution. That's how that happened.
How did we get this thing? How did racism start?
Power struggles. Finding ways to marginalize one group versus another group for power. That's how it started. And I'll tell you what, it didn't start with white people. I don't know how much clearer to make that. There have been wars and cleansings between peoples of different tribes, different areas of the world from the beginning of time. You find a difference between people that is enough to separate you and yours from them and theirs, and they have something you want or a threat of some kind. They found a reason to hate people because of those differences. Wasn't just white people. The sentiments have gone on far longer than you're going to give it credit for, I'm pretty sure.
I think if you had asked me to speculate on that in my ignorance some years ago, I probably would have said, well, I guess somewhere back in deep history, people encountered one another and they found each other strange. Your skin is a different color, your hair is different, you dress funny. I guess I'll just go ahead and jump to the conclusion that since you're different, that you're somehow less than me, and maybe that makes it okay for me to mistreat you.
You would probably be right. Now, would it be called racism necessarily or tribalism? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If the differentiation is as clear as skin color, then racism. If it's something like the Hutus being at war with each other simply because one's Hutu and one's Tutsi, for no other reason than some kind of tribe, would that be racism pure based on skin color? No, but it's pretty close in sentiment, wouldn't you say?
Right? Is like what we imagine or assume? And under that kind of scenario,
Uh-oh, am I roboting? Cutting out every fifth this word. Uh-oh. Unless or until you guys can hear me. I can't tell if I'm roboting. I don't have a co-host on these deals. So yeah, it happened the other day. Robot. Uh-oh. That's not good. Well, if I completely robot, I can't do the show. And I won't continue broadcasting if I can't be heard. So, okay. Now people are telling me I'm okay. Oh boy. Well, I don't know where I left off. I don't know what I was saying when you guys started not hearing me anymore. So I'll just have to continue. All right, guys, I will keep going.
Understanding. But it seems that's wrong. First of all, race is a recent invention. It's just a few hundred years old. Before that, yes, people divided themselves by religion, tribal group, language, things like that.
Yeah, okay. So, granted, I can be heard clearly here. What I was saying before, and I don't know if it got cut out because of roboting. Yeah, finding a difference in another group of people that you then use as a reason to divide yourself or to hate another group is nothing new. During the what I can assume is the robot phase of my broadcast here, I mentioned the Hutu and the Tutsi tribes in Africa. They would war with each other simply on the basis of someone being Hutu or someone being Tutsi. Now, was it a racial thing? I guess it depends on how you define race. Does it come down to something as relatively esoteric as what tribe you belong to? Okay. But that was enough to find a difference to hate another group and to go to war with another group simply because of some hereditary or cultural connection. Skin color is just another reason amongst any other that separates one group or one demographic from another that you can find a reason to hate someone. Racism is not special. It's not unique. It's just one example of a reason to hate. Kind of like what he was talking about, I think, everybody's human, but we're all a little different. Yeah, reasons to hate. They're all reasons to hate. They're not always necessarily the same reason to hate. Racism is just sort of the easiest one to sort of comprehend, I guess, without too much thinking, which is usually what racism comes down to, not too much thinking. So classifying it as something special, it's not really special. At least I don't think so. I think it's just one more excuse for people to hate other people without having to think too hard.
But for most of human history, people had no notion of race. In ancient Greece, for example, and I learned this from the historian Nell Irvin Painter, the Greeks thought they were better than the other people they knew about, but not because of some idea that they were innately superior. They just thought they'd developed the most advanced culture.
So that made them innately superior in their minds. That they possessed an innately superior culture, thus they were innately superior. Or am I missing something?
So they looked around at, the Ethiopians, but also the Persians and the Celts, and they said, they're all kind of barbaric compared to us.
Right, so they believed in their own inherent superiority as compared to everybody else.
Culturally, they're just not Greek, right?
Yeah, and that is almost a distinction without a difference fundamentally with racism. Okay.
And yes, in the ancient world, there was lots of slavery, but people enslaved people who didn't look like them, and they often enslaved people who did.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Africans enslaved Africans. Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. White people enslaved white people. And so and on and on and on. It's true. It's very true. I'm glad you said that.
Did you know that the English word slave is derived from the word Slav?
Yes, I did. I really did. Is that really an obscure piece of information at this point?
Because Slavic people were enslaved by all kinds of folks, including Western Europeans, for centuries.
And aren't Slavs, generally speaking, white?
Right. Slavery wasn't about race either, because no one had thought up race yet.
No one had thought up race yet. Really? Okay.
So who did? I put that question to another leading historian, Ibram Kendi. I didn't expect he would answer the question in the form of one person's name and a date, as if we were talking about the light bulb. But he did. He said in his exhaustive research, he found what he believed to be the first articulation of racist ideas. And he named the culprit. This guy should be more famous or infamous. His name is Gomez de Zurara.
Gomez de Zurara. I'll be honest, never heard the name so far as I know.
Portuguese man, wrote a book in the 1450s in which he did something that no one had ever done before, according to Dr. Kendi. He lumped together all of the people of Africa, vast, diverse continent, and he described them as a distinct group, inferior and beastly.
A Portuguese man? Huh. Okay.
Never mind that in that pre-colonial time, some of the most sophisticated cultures in the world were in Africa. Why would this guy make this claim?
Probably because he thought he was being a scientist at the time or something. I mean, a lot of science thought that by the shape of your skull, that could determine certain aspects of your character and intelligence. So I don't know. What did 1400s anthropology, social science, whatever, do tell us? Why did this guy feel justified to do that freaking, 600 years ago?
Turns out it helps to follow the money. First of all, Zurara was hired to write that book.
Oh, okay. By whom?
By the Portuguese king.
Okay. So, no, I'm not sure where this is going.
And just a few years before, slave traders, here we go, slave traders tied to the Portuguese crown had effectively pioneered the Atlantic slave trade. They were the first Europeans to sail directly to sub-Saharan Africa to kidnap and enslave African people.
Okay. So the king paid a guy to write a book to dehumanize the people that he was profiting off of enslaving, I should say. Okay. Yeah, okay, that makes political sense. Doesn't make it right, but it makes sense politically at the time if you're an evil king.
So it was suddenly really helpful to have a story about the inferiority of African people to justify this new trade.
And as we know, no Africans ever enslaved other Africans or sold Africans to people who are not from Africa. That never happened either, of course.
To other people, to the church, to themselves. And with the stroke of a pen, Zurara invented both blackness and whiteness because he basically created the notion of blackness through this description of Africans. And as Dr. Kendi says, blackness has no meaning without whiteness.
Really? Really? Blackness has no meaning without whiteness. All right.
Other European countries followed the Portuguese lead in looking to Africa for human property and free labor, and in adopting this fiction about the inferiority of African people.
And then Donald Trump. I'm waiting to see how we're tracking from what is distinctly ancient history to the problems with white people and Donald Trump.
I found this clarifying. Racism didn't start with a misunderstanding, it started with a lie.
Oh my God. Well, tell me more. And then tell me how white people are inherently flawed because they're white people.
Meanwhile, over here in colonial America, the people now calling themselves white got busy taking these racist ideas and turning them into law. Laws that stripped all human rights from the people they were calling black and locking them into our particularly vicious brand of chattel slavery.
Which is totally still legal, totally still revered as the best thing that ever happened, and is still practiced today. Oh, wait, no, that's completely wrong.
And laws that gave even the poorest white people benefits, not big benefits in material terms, but the right to not be enslaved for life.
Yeah, there were no indentured servants who were white. There were no slaves who were white in America. Never happened. Never happened. There were no white people that were classified as subhuman because they were Irish or anything. Nope, never happened at all. Or Italian, never happened.
The right to not have your loved ones torn from your arms and sold.
Yeah, no, white people were never enslaved in America. There were no indentured servants. There were no children taken away from no, never happened. Never happened.
And sometimes real goodies. The handouts of free land to white places like Virginia, to white people only, started long before the American Revolution and continued long after. Now, I can imagine there would be people listening to me if they're still listening.
Well, I'm only doing so through a great, great effort, as I'm sure my audience is as well.
Who might be thinking, oh, come on, this is all ancient history. Why does this matter? Things have changed. Can't we just get over it and move on?
I would ask that question, save for people like you who constantly need to dwell on the ancient past and ignore every single advancement in culture and law that has occurred since that time because Donald Trump.
Right. But I would argue, for me, certainly, learning this history has brought a real shift in the way that I understand racism today.
Or has it brought a shift in how much you hate your own skin color and indict anyone else who shares it with your newfound shame?
To review, 2 quick takeaways from what I've said so far. 1, race is not a thing biologically. It's a story some people decided to tell.
The differences in human beings amongst the different areas of the world in which they evolved created different races of human beings. Race is not a determinative factor in the quality of a person, but it is a thing that exists biologically, genetically, and observably.
And 2, people told that story to justify the brutal exploitation of other human beings for profit.
Or the study of the differences of biological races amongst human beings is done to understand human evolution and the human species in general. I took a class in high school, an Anthropology 101 class that gave out the basics of the different races of human beings based on what part of the world that they evolved in, whether it was Africa, East Asia, South America, and so on. Understanding things is not inherently to say that some things are worse than others, unless you're a racist. So again, tell me about the problems with white people.
I didn't learn those two facts in school. I suspect most of us didn't. If you did, you had a special teacher.
I will grant you that. I had a very special teacher. My anthropology teacher is probably one of the best teachers I ever had. I'll grant you that. But it was a public education and not really anything that special elsewise, as far as I can tell.
Right. But once they sink in, for one thing, it becomes clear that racism is not mainly a problem of attitudes, of individual bigotry.
Bigotry is not racism. Bigotry is the intolerance of another person due to a difference of ideas and beliefs. Bigotry and racism are not the same thing.
Now, it's a tool. It's a tool to divide us and to prop up systems, economic, political, and social systems that advantage some people and disadvantage others.
And what system are you propping up by vilifying people on the basis of their skin color? Might I ask?
And it's a tool to convince a lot of white folks who may or may not be getting a great deal out of our highly stratified society to support the status quo.
That's right, guys. Remember, if you're white and you're poor, you're stupid and easily manipulated. Just remember that. If you're white and you're poor, you're stupid and easily manipulated.
Could be worse. At least I'm white.
Yeah. You know who thinks that? People like you.
Once I grasped the origins of racism, I stopped being mystified by the fact that it's still with us. I guess, looking back, I thought about racism as being sort of like the flat earth, this bad, outdated thinking that would fade away on its own before long.
Yeah, because racism is so popular these days. So much more popular now than it was in the 60s. Boy, oh boy, we've seen practically a renaissance in racism in the last 5 or 10 years. Now, you might think I'm being facetious there, but I'm not. I'm actually not. This guy is an example of perpetuated racism. Right here. I don't know how else to put it.
But now this tool of whiteness is still doing the job it was invented to do. Powerful people go to work every day, leveraging and reinforcing this old weapon.
Yeah. Are you one of those people that goes to work and is leveraging that old weapon to your own benefit? To stand up on a stage as a journalist to tell us all how you've discovered that your skin color is an inherent sin? Are you really that lacking in self-awareness of what you've just said in relation to what you are currently doing?
In the halls of power, in some broadcast studios we could mention. And we don't need to fuss over whether these people believe what they're saying, whether they're really racist. That's not what it's about. It's about pocketbooks, power. Finally, I think the biggest lesson of all, and let me talk in particular to the white folks for a minute.
Oh, you hadn't been this whole time, given how you opened up this talk? Oh, well, all right. I guess everybody else can just stick their fingers in their ears.
Once we understand that people who look like us invented the very notion of race in order to advantage themselves and us, isn't it easier to see that it's our problem to solve?
Oh, for God's sake. Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't aware that I looked Portuguese, first and foremost, if your little history lesson is to be believed. But now you've done it. Now you've done it. You have conferred a particular way of thinking, a particular guilt upon people based simply on the color of their skin. A quality of character, a quality of thought, a quality of responsibility is now inhabited within anyone with a particular skin color. How can you not see that you are promoting the very thing that you are railing against? How? I've always been curious how such a blatant lack of self-awareness can exist in someone. Anyway.
It's a white people problem.
Yeah, no, I got that. I got that. Thanks for clarifying.
I'm embarrassed to say that for a long time I thought of racism as being mainly a struggle for people of color to fight. Sort of like the people on the TV screen when I was a kid. Or as if I were on the sidelines at a sports contest. On one side, people of color. On the other, those real racists, the Southern sheriff, the people in hoods. And I was sincerely rooting for people of color to win the struggle. But no, there are no sidelines. We're all in it. We are implicated.
No, we are not all implicated. You may want everyone to be implicated to somehow, I don't know, dilute your own sense of guilt or sense of shame. Misery loves company. You need everyone else to feel as terrible as you do. No, I choose not to feel terrible about myself because you tell me that I am inherently bad over something I have no control over that somehow makes me think a way that I don't actually think. No, I refuse. Thank you, Chief Moody. Racism is alive and well, but it's targeted towards white people. No. Racism is alive and well. It's targeted against all types of people. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, all over the place. It's just not nearly as prevalent as this guy would have us believe. That's the thing. You know a racist when you come across one because they don't care whether anyone knows if they're a racist. It's just, anyway.
And if I'm not joining the struggle to dismantle a system that advantages me, I am complicit.
How are you dismantling the system that advantages you? How? By denigrating anyone who shares your skin color? Because white people as a demographic are a system, I guess? Tell me again the root of the word slave.
This isn't about shame or guilt. White guilt doesn't get anything done. And honestly, I don't feel a lot of guilt.
Okay, imagine, if you will, a giant blue X button floating right over my head that I am currently punching over and over and over again to doubt.
History isn't my fault or yours.
Oh, isn't it? Didn't you just get through telling us all how all that's just ancient history? But no, it's a white people problem. You just got done telling us this. What are you talking about?
What I do feel is a stronger sense of responsibility to do something.
Oh, okay. Well, you've taken the burden of the earth on your shoulders there, Atlas. What are you doing? What are you doing that's so heroic to dismantle the system that benefits you? Please tell me, what is your grand effort?
All of this has altered the way that I think about and approach my work as a documentary storyteller and as a teacher.
Oh, please don't tell me that you're molding young minds this way. I don't know who this guy is, guys. I don't know what his career is. I don't know what his CV is. But please don't tell me you're like a high school teacher or college professor or something. Oh, boy.
But beyond that, besides that, what does it mean? What does it mean for any of us? Does it mean that we support leaders who want to push ahead with a conversation about reparations?
Oh, by all means, go back to that congressional hearing on reparations that happened last year, thereabouts. Coleman Hughes was on it. Yeah, watch that entire little episode and see where that would have gone if it had gone any higher.
In our communities, are we finding people who are working to transform unjust institutions and supporting that work? At my job, am I the white person who shows up grudgingly for the diversity and equity meeting? Or am I trying to figure out how to be a real accomplice to my colleagues of color?
I could say something here, but it's nothing that I haven't said in numerous videos in the past. So,
Seems to me wherever we show up, we need to show up with humility and vulnerability and a willingness to put down this power that we did not earn.
yeah, we need to show up with our heads bowed, begging for forgiveness for our skin color. And even if we are, poor and disenfranchised ourselves and everything else, but, we still have power because, we're white, and that obviously imparts power on us just inherently. White power, which is what our speaker wants us to believe that white people possess inherently, which is not in any way racist, of course.
I believe we also stand to benefit if we could create a society that's not built on the exploitation or oppression of anyone.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but that element's always going to exist in capitalism. That's why everybody needs to take the initiative and the opportunities in front of them when they can. It is a dog-eat-dog world, which is why there are no black millionaires, obviously, or anything.
But in the end, we should do this. We should show up, figure out how to take action, because it's right.
Was he crying there at the end? That seemed like he was a word or two away from crying. Okay. Well, there you go, guys. The problem with white people is that they're all racist. We're all contributing to it because 600 years ago, a Portuguese guy wrote a paid-for book to help a king justify enslaving people. Also Donald Trump. And just so you know, nothing has changed since the 1400s. I always love it how so easily dismissed is everything that this country has gone through. Every law changed, every movement that's moved forward, everything that has altered, how things are not the same as they used to be. Are they perfect? No. Will they ever be perfect? No. And yet, by the way, guys, don't you know that if you have a particular skin color, you think a particular way. You possess a particular kind of quality. You are implicitly complicit with some great crime because of your skin color. Now, take whatever skin color you prefer and insert it into that statement, and that's fine. That's just truth. It's not at all racist, no matter how you cut it. No, it's just true because it is. Because I say so. And if you say no, if you deny it, if you fight against it, well, that's just more evidence of your complicity. Now, we're going to put you in the lake. If you float, you're a witch. And if you sink, well, maybe your soul will be cleansed. Let's test it out. All right, guys. Well, now I turn to you for the last couple minutes here. We've already gone over an hour a little bit, but that's fine. I'm going to put a big note on this after I've posted it, saying anybody coming in the future, forgive the momentary roboting, because can't do anything about it now, but there you go. So if you guys have any statements or comments you'd like to make, put them in the chat now. I'll get a couple in, and then we'll wrap this up for the day. Nothing for you here. What if you sink and don't die? Are you still a witch? No, you're Aquaman. Or woman. Whatever her name was. I forget. Let's see. Mr. United for the Children. Am I racist if I hate roboting? No, I don't think so. Because audio problems, so far as I know, or broadcasting problems, are not themselves a race. So, Assassin of the Gray. It was not part of their blood. It came to them very late with long arrears to make it good when the Saxon began to hate. Rudyard Kipling. Aha. Data Wasteland. Scribe, you are the coolest monkey in the jungle. There are so many ways that could be taken the wrong way, and I point them all at Ranting Monkey. Zeo Gold. People like that are why actual far-right pro-white groups are on the rise. To an extent, I suppose so. I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't claim to know for sure. But I can see where they would gain a lot of propaganda points and pointing to somebody like that and saying, see, we're being victimized. We need to unite against the oncoming onslaught of racial cleansing or something. This guy doesn't have any power. I mean, even though he'd like to think that he does somehow, just because of what he looks like, he doesn't have any power. Which is kind of funny if you think about it. Delfruit Zero Scribble, have you ever read The White Man's Burden? No, never have. Heroic Nyko, would a wood elf be considered racist if he didn't sell arrows to a sun elf? Yes. Yes. I'm going to say yes. The Broken Baller says, these kinds of dudes cause the white lash Van Jones spoke of. I don't actually think that's the case. There wasn't a white lash. There was a, do I pick Hillary? Am I sad over Bernie getting sidelined? Or do I just go for Trump because the lulz, or a better economy, or because I'm just inherently Republican, or because I hate Hillary? I think that was a lot of the equation that year, more than anything else. Irie Prostate says he is a local NPR audio documentarian. Okay. All right. I was more concerned about the teacher thing, but then I don't know if he's a teacher or something. Let's see. Nothing for you here. The culture war is a very fringe thing. It would be a fringe thing if it wasn't rebroadcast as loudly and as broadly by the mainstream media as it is. It might have started out as a fringe thing, and it did, kind of a Tumblr kind of deal and a whole bunch of other stuff. If you look at the early Internet Aristocrat videos where he's doing his Tumblrisms, that's the fringe in 2013, 2014. And here we are today. And it's far more mainstream. So the fringe has become far more not fringe than it used to be. Nothing for you here. Most people don't have a clue what's going on. I don't blame people for not paying attention to it because it doesn't have anything to do with their real lives for the most part. Until it does, until it drops on them in some kind of company policy or some kind of law or something that comes across the way. I would forgive people for not having any idea about some of the things that are being pumped out there right now, because oftentimes it doesn't visit upon Joe Normal, and I'm not gonna pretend that somehow I'm plugged into some secret knowledge or something. I go looking for this stuff. I go on TEDx and I look for things that jump out at me as interesting titles of talks that seem ridiculous to me on their face, and usually I'm pleasantly unsurprised. So, I mean, yeah, no, this is all crafted. Trust me. I just like to be aware, because like I was saying before, what was fringe a couple of years ago is mainstream now, right? Or more mainstream than it was. And so when I'm looking at things like this, I'm looking for the new fringe or the new twist on the old fringe that might visit upon us more sooner than we expect. because these things have a habit of galvanizing themselves. You know, the old phrase, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want a glass of milk. If you let in a little bit of regressive idea as common practice or common belief, it opens the door for even more regressive ideas and notions coming down the pike. And maybe that's what I'm looking to at least be aware of rather than be surprised by it going forward. I don't know. Maybe I think about these things too much. Probably. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming out today and joining me on this. Apologies for the roboting. I wish I had some control over that, but unfortunately I do not. I'll put a note on the video that anybody coming across this in the future should sort of scan forward from that a little bit and find out where I was talking again clearly. But yeah, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your participation. Thanks to everyone who donated. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. And everyone, please stay safe. Please stay well. And if you're not well, please get well soon. Hope to see you tonight on Monkey's channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Lords of the Night. And otherwise, guys, have a great rest of the afternoon, and I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye-bye.